Good evening. Hi. I'm Paul Paletti. Thank you for being here and welcome to the 2025 Louisville Photo Biennial Keynote Lecture. And, our guest tonight is Sam Abell, and he will be speaking with you shortly. And in the meantime, or to begin, I want to thank all of the photographers who are here, who have participated in the Photo Biennial, the galleries, museums, other cultural venues, colleges and universities, everybody joining together in a very cooperative effort to create the Biennial, which has grown from 4 galleries in 1999 up to 54 venues this year throughout. And we're in Louisville, Southern Indiana, Frankfort, Shelbyville, Lexington, Moorhead, and Danville. So we've got quite a reach, and hopefully we'll continue doing that, not just further, but better. And I'm really happy to say that the quality and sophistication of the exhibits that are going on this year are absolutely incredible, and I hope you'll get to as many of them as you possibly can. I want to especially thank Sam Miller, where are you, Sam? Right there. Sam is our administrator. She's the one who gathers all the information that the photographers and venues have sent in, cleans it up, makes it somewhat understandable and codified, and then sends it on to Elizabeth Spalding and her team, who are back here somewhere. Where are you, Elizabeth? And she and her team put together the program guide, which you have on your seats, and the website. We also want to thank Julie Schweitzer, who gathers up and organizes the Southern Indiana contingent, and our board of directors and our volunteers, who have given so much of their time and efforts to make this all possible, because it is very much a volunteer effort. Thank you. And of course, we also want to thank our corporate sponsors, Murphy's Camera, who has supported us for many years, the Speed Museum, who has donated this space for us to use, as well as Photo Focus Cincinnati, who has been a good friend and supporter for many years. And you should go to their biennial, which is in even-numbered years. And then also Abandoned Cameras, which was formerly Chuck Rubin's, and 21 Sky Design, Elizabeth Spalding's company. Finally, we want to thank all the individuals who have so generously donated to support this, because that's how we make it all work. I want to introduce Sam Abell to you, and I won't take very long because he's going to tell you his history. But he grew up in Ohio, studied at University of Kentucky, and then spent 6 months in Louisville as an intern for the Courier-Journal. Along the way, he gathered so many close and wonderful friends. Many of you are here tonight. And it's those friendships, particularly the ones with Pam Spalding, Tom Harden, and Bill Luster, that have brought him here tonight. And of course, Bill passed earlier this year, and we're very sorry. We miss him so much. Sam is a photographer's photographer. His images are beautifully composed and crafted and self-contained visual poems. Today, he was talking with the patron group from Photo Focus in Cincinnati that came down, and he was describing his process and the things that go on. And it's not just what you frame, but how he came to it, how his emotions were interacting with that, how it all came together as he waited for the right moment after having created the framing for what he was looking at. But it all comes together in a way that perfectly melds and merges these things in his photographs. It's these experiences, and it's not just the product the photographs, but the process that got him there, that's so perfectly merged in what he does. So without further, I'm going to turn it over to Sam to show us his images. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, this is special. Thank you very much.
It is for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I told Paul not to give an introduction that I couldn't live up to, so he's done it, though. There's a photographer in my soul, and that's Bill Luster. This is my first trip to Louisville since 1968, when Bill was not here. It's different. I thank you, Paul, for everything that you've pulled together, for the volunteers, for your staff, for your vision. This is special for the city and special for photographers. I had to wrap my mind around a theme to make this presentation, and the theme is honoring. I wanted to honor Louisville, UK, state of Kentucky, and photography itself. But above all, I wanted to honor Bill Luster. Can we cut the lights any more than this? If so, it'd be good. Yeah. Okay. This is how the Courier Journal, where Bill worked for 42 years, this is how they wrote the story. So the quote, "the most beloved person," is by me. The photograph is by Pam Spaulding. The love is something that we all felt, not just for Bill, but for you, Linda. I dedicate this show to you and Bill. These are my parents when they were secretly married. They were high school teachers in Mallorystown, Ohio, Southern Ohio, during the Depression, where it was not permissible for a married couple to both hold down jobs. So they eloped to the Alexandria, Virginia courthouse on a senior class trip that they were chaperoning. And kept it secret for 2 years. My dad was born in LaRue County, Kentucky, Sonora. And the difference between my dad and my mom from Painesville, Ohio, in far northeast Ohio, the difference could be summarized by how they said the name of this city. My dad said something sweet and rolling like Louisville. And my mother said Louisville. My grandmother was the only adult and really the only person in my dad's life. Her first two husbands died of scarlet fever, and she and my dad grew up on a little farm in LaRue County called Knob Farm. And she taught school at Knob School, where my dad was a student for the first 8 years of his education. What, you may ask, can you learn in a one-room school in LaRue County, Kentucky. And the answer is everything that's important. How to write a magnificent love letter, and how to recognize and express what love is. My mother threw away all my dad's letters, including those from World War II, when he was in the Pacific. She said, they were between your father and me. She overlooked this, which was in the family Bible, a letter that he secretly wrote to her in 1938, 3 months after they were married. That's all you need to know about my dad. All you need to know about my mom is this map she made when she was pregnant with my brother in 1942. It was her aspiration that we, as a family of 4, would touch all of those states and learn American history firsthand. This is my mother, French, English, and Latin teacher, the school librarian. And when I had to describe her in one word in a speech in Ohio 30 years ago, I chose the word exacting. She had standards, and one of those standards was how things look. And that included how my brother and I looked. So for 10 years, she dressed us, 3 years apart in age, as twins in clothes that she made. Here we are on vacation, dressed as twins. It wasn't enough to stand on this banana boat in Baton Rouge. We had to get on the boat and learn about imports, exports, stevedores, and shake hands with the workers. That expresses my mother's and my dad's idea about travel. Travel was about learning. Our house was filled with things that taught. One of them was a 200 or 300 slide-filled box of stereopticon slides. You put these into a stereopticon viewer, and they popped into 3D. And of them all, this is the one that amazed me the most. I thought, impossible for anyone to gesture, impossible for that posture to be achieved. What could it possibly express? And this is the most important book in our family library. Worn out, finally broken, and glued back together by me. From it, I learned that photography was humanistic. It was about people. My dad ran the camera club at our high school. I still have my membership card. And this is my favorite photograph, made by my dad in 1954. It's a photograph of my brother wearing Cleveland Indians shirt and hat and standing in front of our grandfather's car, about to go fishing. This is a picture of a boy in heaven. And to me, it's a heavenly photograph. Simple, unpretentious, low technology, everyday camera work and processing in every way. What's the most important thing to put into a photograph? The answer is heart. I long wanted to live up to this photograph, and I did when I was 14. This is that photograph. It's a photograph of my dad on one of our photo outings where we are watching a train depart for New York City. In both of our different ways, we wanted to be on that train. we wanted to go to New York City. That photograph won the smallest prize in the 1960 Kodak National High School Contest. It was transformative for me. Seeing my name in the back of that booklet that carried the first, second, and third places. To see my name there was, as I said, transformative. For one thing, it associated me for the first time with the word national, the National High School Photo Contest. That contest and the photograph of my dad came to the attention of the most influential man of my young life, my high school journalism teacher. In my senior year, he made me editor of the paper, editor of the yearbook, and photographer for both. It felt like 4 full-time jobs, and it was and is the happiest year of my life. This is that yearbook. It was his recommendation that I attend the University of Kentucky, which, as he well knew, had no photo program. But they wanted to start one. And I and a young man from Owensboro, Clyde Wills, were the first student photographers at UK. That's Clyde in the foreground, me in the middle ground, and Dick Ware, the great mentor of mine in college. Dick died young in surgery. And his widow, after looking very deeply into his archive, found his 1965 Leica M2, and she sent it to me. This is it. If any of you are camera people, I invite you to come up and live again as we once lived when we were on the high ground of photography. As you know, because Paul said it, I went on to a career at National Geographic. But a few years ago, Clyde attended a lecture of mine in Nashville. I was overwhelmed with joy to meet him, to see him again. We had a beer afterwards together, and I asked him to tell me about his life and career. He said, well, Sam, I moved to Metropolis, Illinois. And I said, Metropolis? That's Superman's hometown. He said, yes, it is. And I was editor of the paper and publisher. And I said, you're not talking about the Daily Planet. And he said, yes, I am. And I said, Clyde, I'm not sure which one of us had the better career. Giving orders to Clark Kent, actually Superman, would be a pretty good career. So I'm proud of Clyde, happy that we met again. He was going to try and be here tonight, and he might be here tonight. If he is, he's making me happy all over again. Thank you, Clyde. Photographers that I was most influenced by are Paul Caponegro for his poetry, Dorothea Lange for her humanity, and Cartier-Bresson for his complex, full-frame compositions. I knew nothing about full-frame, but Dick Ware and my great friend Bill Rowan explained to me, Sam, full-frame is no cropping, no post-production. It's straight photography. I think I heard that in my sophomore year. I knew that it would be immensely hard to be a full-frame photographer, but I was young. I was idealistic. I had aspirations. And so I took it on. And from my sophomore year in college, steadily, not all at once, but steadily, I became a full frame, no crop, no post-production photographer. I will tell you this about that. It was a great career move. I did it for aesthetic reasons. But when I got to National Geographic, it was all full frame. What you showed the editor after a year of work on some story were Kodak slides and cardboard mounts. That is raw, out of the camera imagery. And I succeeded because I could do it. I saw with full frame consciousness. I still do. I played a game in my mind when I was in college. And no one knows about it. But I'll tell you tonight what it was. And that is, I imagined meeting Cartier-Bresson and explaining who I was and his influence on me in one photograph. And what would that photograph be? I set my life goal to create one photograph worthy of Bresson. This was not it. My first paid job at UK was to go with a representative from the Rural Electric Administration to Appalachia to photograph the war on poverty, basically, and why Appalachia needed to be electrified. He drove me around, and I would get out and take pictures. This is one of them. That is, this is what I sent to the client. But because I was a devotee of Bresson, and because I wanted to be honest with my photography, I knew that this, though it may be a good picture of Appalachia, dishonored or it misrepresented my experience. It wasn't honest to my experience. This was my experience. I was afraid to get out of the car. This is drive-by photography. It's not what I wanted to do, but I was too afraid, too young, too naive, too bewildered to tell the truth. Besides, the client didn't want it. But this is the picture that reminds me who I actually was. I show this as two pictures, and I call it first and best. And if you were in a workshop of mine, this is what you would produce for 5 days or 6 or 7 days. Every day you would show one situation that was the first and the best, and you would discuss with me and the class what you had done to move from the first to the best. You will see many examples of that tonight. This is one of them. In 1965, to learn color photography, I accompanied a UK group to a barrio high in the Andes above Bogota to build a school. When we weren't building a school, I photographed in the spirit of Dorothea Lange and Bresson. From a distance, I saw this man, and what else I saw was really me, the first instance of me, and that is the setting. I saw that the setting was unblemished, that in an Adobe graphic of harmonic colors, the background went all the way to the end of the picture. But like in Eastern Kentucky, I did not have the nerve to stop and compose this picture. This is walk-by photography. I saw him, I saw the background, I saw that they came together, and I walked toward him. Without stopping, I raised the camera to my eye, made a clean, whole, comprehensive composition, and kept on walking. I carried the achievement of that for 2 months in my mind. It grew in my mind. And when I got back to Lexington, I got the film developed. And I was mortified to find out that I had not captured a clean background. It was there. I just would have had to jog to my right. I did not. I kept walking, and I trusted my instincts. No, the photograph is ruined. And that critically mattered to me. It matters today to finish the photograph. And the way I finish photographs is I begin with the background. Fit the subject to the setting. Setting first, subject second. This is what I teach, this is what I do. But I didn't do it here. And in a moment of temporary insanity, I got out a piece of tape and taped over my mistakes so I could show this picture to colleagues. I instantly realized that I'd ruined the photograph for life. Now it really looked awful. And so for 50 years, I hid the picture. And 3 years ago, because I'm working on a retrospective book, I got the picture out. This is what it looked like. I took it out of the mount. There's the tape covering up my sin. I knew that the film would be ruined, of course, but I got a technician to pry the tape off. And that's what I saw. The film wasn't ruined, improbably. But the other thing I saw is I didn't mind that finish. No, it wasn't perfect, which is what I apparently wanted when I was 20 years old. What it was authentic. It was better as a composition than the taped over composition. There was space, there was context, there was a legitimate setting. No, not perfect, authentic. It only took me 50 years to realize that authenticity trumps perfection. Meanwhile, back at UK, I became editor of the 1967 UK yearbook, and I realized why it hadn't dawned on me earlier, that yearbooks have a seriously low ceiling because they have all of that mandatory content. I wanted a pure book of photographs of life at UK that school year. A yearbook could not provide it. What was I going to do? I had a brainstorm, the only one of my life. I had it on a plane flying from Cincinnati to Toledo. My grandfather had died. I hitchhiked up on I-75 to the airport. An awful day, cloudy, rainy. And we rose above the clouds, and there was an immaculate carpet of white clouds and a blue sky. I'd never seen that. By the time we landed in Toledo, I'd solved the yearbook problem. I'm holding the answer in my hands. It's the 1967 2-volume Sam Abell brainchild yearbook that no one at UK understood. Except photographers, lovers of books, yearbook aficionados, and they existed. The first book was entirely devoted to what I'm going to call progressive photography in the tradition of Life magazine, photo essays. To make that, I lived in the yearbook office on this cot for 1 year. This is not me, this is Tom Grayler, who was the assistant editor. But the woman who made it happen, the only woman at UK that ever understood me, was on the yearbook staff, and she's sitting right here, Gretchen Markham Brown. A woman who, upon my graduation from UK, after my 6th year, took me, because she understood me, she took me to Shakertown as my graduation present. This is a woman with insight and intelligence. She later became the yearbook editor herself. This is that yearbook, the '67 Kentuckian, known still today in yearbook circles. I loved that book until I opened it. There was the title page, and there was the mortifying mistake of my young life. I took all of the credit for the yearbook. I left Dick Ware, who had done really heroic, epic work for this book. I left his name off. Why I did that, I do not know. A moment, I guess, of spiritual vacancy. And it ruined the book for me. This is what it should have been. Dick's name, Richard L. Ware, photographer. But there was no way that I could fix that. Dick said he didn't mind. That was part of his greatness. He was sincere. He said, Sam, this was your idea. You wouldn't have happened without you. It was visionary, and you did the real work on this. And that helped a little. The book got me an internship at National Geographic, but I almost blew that because I sent 2 packages, 1, color originals, 2, black and white, my college UK pictures in the yearbook. The color originals were lost in the mail. The black and whites almost did not arrive. The reason is, though I'd spent a year preparing that portfolio, I used water-soluble ink. And I thought I was doomed. National Geographic was color. My mistake had cost me my color. I was not ruined. My UK photographs were enough to get me an internship. The first assignment I was sent on was an archaeological dig in Arizona. I learned there that there's a reason that interns are sent on digs. Nothing moves. But I threw myself into it, and I got one morning a spectacular dawn. And a staff photographer named Albert Moldvay looked through my work because I had met him on my first day at Geographic, and I complimented him for a speech that he had given at Kent State University when I was 15. He had forgotten the speech, but he was charmed that I mentioned it, charmed that I was standing in front of him, and he, the staff photographer, looked at my raw film. I never saw that happen again. I never saw a staff photographer look through anyone's film, let alone an intern. He sent a telegram to me. The telegram came to the attention of Bob Gilka, who gave me another assignment to go around the world via the Arctic ice cap, the Northeast and Northwest passages, which was the last voyage of world significance yet unaccomplished. We made it halfway around and were stopped by the Russians. On the way back, my neck became paralyzed in a 6-day gale in the North Sea, and I almost lost my left hand. I spoke about this to no one because I thought it was part of living the National Geographic life. Neither the rainbow picture or this picture has ever been published. I will publish them for the first time in my retrospective book. In 1968, I was a summer intern for the Courier-Journal Sunday magazine. Not the newspaper, the magazine. And it was the happiest summer of my life. Far happier, far more learning than being an intern at the Geographic, where I was on my own. At the Courier-Journal, I was surrounded by brilliant, hardworking, warm-hearted, dedicated photo staff. Best photo staff I was ever on. I did things that I wouldn't do again for 50 years. I took fashion photographs. This is called the leather look for fall. And it was my first cover of anything photograph. And this is the press pull, something that the editor got before anyone else. And when the editor of the magazine brought me this, there was something stapled to it, a note. This is that note. Jeff, who shot this cover? It's great. Barry Bingham Jr. We're talking about one of the great editors, one of the great newspapers, one of the great Sunday magazines in America. I can't remember what I got paid that summer because I got paid in this note. It would be 50 years before I would photograph fashion again. It would be far, far different. This photograph by Dan Dry is one of my favorite photographs. It's the only photograph that I have up in my office in Charlottesville, Virginia. Why? It's the best of life, the best of friendship, the best of photography. It's Bill Luster and Pam Spaulding after I left the Courier Journal. It told me I left something great. Meanwhile, I had not graduated from college. I was supposed to be in the class of 67. This is July 69. My dad's writing me a letter. It's his 8-point plan on how to graduate from college. My favorite one is point number 2, which says, lean forward from the hip line toward prof. And then he signs it. He signs it, Daddy Boy, which was my nickname for him. And then he has 3 more thoughts. Take notes or pretend to be taking notes. Ask, this is a great one, ask to sit closer. And then as a final thought, give the prof a bottle of liquor as a going away gift. I graduated from UK, and in 1970, I became a contract photographer for Geographic. In 1990, I became a staff photographer. It was my life and my career. And all I can tell you about that is that I was young. I knew that I was young. I knew where I was. And I knew that this couldn't be the stop. This had to be the start. From this platform, from this opportunity, now greater than I even thought it was then, from this position in life and in my profession, I had to do something. I had to go beyond National Geographic. And where is that? And the answer is inside myself. I had to become the artist that I wanted to become. This was a golden opportunity. To understand my work, which you're about to see, there are 3 elements you may consider. One is the word structure. I consider that I'm a structuralist. I compose the setting and wait for the subject. I'm a compose and wait photographer. The other is the horizon line, which comes from growing up in the glacier flattened landscape of Northwest Ohio. Everything I saw, land, water, life, ended on the horizon line. And the third is the color gray. To me, the most eloquent color in the spectrum in and for itself, but also because it makes all other colors better. Those are the foundational elements of my photography. I will not talk about them henceforth, but they are there to be seen. I was reluctant to give up black and white, and for several years, 5, 7, 8, 10 years, I kept a black and white diary for 2 reasons: love of black and white and devotion to daily life, belief in daily life as the high subject of photography. Black and white was my first love. It still is my first love. This is a self-portrait in the Montreal airport. I'm about to take a red eye on my first assignment to Newfoundland in winter. In the men's room are 2 inebriated French-Canadian men singing patriotic songs of Quebec. And my thought is, let the music, whatever it is, of this life begin. I wanted the diary to tell the truth about assignment life. And the truth is, I was often lonely and often lost. And not just lost geographically, lost in identity. Who was I? Was I a student? I had been for a long time. Was I a newspaper photographer? I'd been that at the Courier-Journal. Was I a teacher? I'd taught high school. Or was I a National Geographic photographer? Whatever that meant. I had no idea. I was clueless about where pictures came from, clueless about who I was, alone, confused, stalled out, and often slept in my car. Why? To be there for the early morning light. That's all I knew. And when I got nothing from that, and I mean royally nothing, I wouldn't leave my hotel room. Not today, not tomorrow, not the next day. I had photographer's block. This is a Sunday morning, and I'm watching an American religious program from the Akron Baptist Tabernacle, the Reverend Rex Humbard. And I think, this is not the life that I imagined, but it was the life that I had. What broke that spell? Art. Particularly the art of Christopher Pratt, Newfoundland's great painter, and one of Canada's great painters. That's one of his paintings on the wall. His paintings had 2 characteristics. They were obviously of Newfoundland, identifiable Newfoundland scenes, but they were marked by his style, his sensibility. I saw that and I wanted it. I spent an afternoon with him listening. I was confused. He was not. He had what I lacked as an artist. He had conviction. It was conviction that I was lacking. After leaving his studio that afternoon, I never lacked conviction. That afternoon, I took a picture that I wouldn't have made that morning. 3 years later, it ended up on the cover of Camera magazine, which was a Swiss magazine known the world over as the leading fine art photography magazine in the world. Having the cover established me as a photographer and also, in my mind, as an artist. I had Christopher Pratt to thank for that. I commonly talk about life-changing assignments. This one actually was. I was assigned to do a book on the Pacific Crest Hiking Trail, a 2,700-mile trail that starts at the Mexico-California border and ends at the Washington-Canada border and travels through the highest mountains of the far west. It is arduous. It is long. to walk the whole thing. It takes through hikers 7 months doing 17 miles a day. I was not doing that, and I felt sheepish about it. I was doing a book by high pointing the trail together with the writer. But we met 4 through hikers at the Mexico-California border. This is them. The woman on the right dropped out after 50 miles. The man in the brown shirt lasted the length of California. That left this couple, boyfriend and girlfriend, Hal Simmons and Denise Myers of Colorado Springs, Colorado. They went the distance. Mexico to Canada, 7 months. But I only had eyes for Denise. We fell in love on the trail. And by the time she got to Canada, we were deeply in love. This is Hal's photograph of her near the Canadian border. Denise and I were married in 1977, and I got an assignment to photograph the volcanoes of Hawaii. We went there on our honeymoon. This is Denise on the top of Mauna Loa, and the photograph does not overstate our happiness and our commitment to the life ahead. Denise forsook a career. We both forsook having children. We traveled together for 28 years. How to summarize a 30-year career at the Geographic? Should I count the covers? This one from Australia. This one from Ireland. Or this one from the Cape York Peninsula of Australia. 3 covers in 30 years. Not a high number. Other photographers had many more. I did not. But I will say this about the 3. All 3 were authentic photographs, not shot to be covers. But the editors found in it significant worth, worthy enough to be on the cover. And I rest easily with these covers because they are real. But I do not measure my career in covers. I measure it in individual images knit together in what I call photographic poems. I'm creating a book that is nothing but small, intensely realized, very concise poems. This is a 6-picture poem from 14 months of continuous photography on the subject of canoeing in America. Each poem, I believe, should have a theme, and the theme of this poem is stillness. Why stillness? Because I hold stillness high, personally, emotionally, and spiritually. I seek it, I recognize it, I photograph it. And canoeing and still photography have stillness in common. The subject is stillness. Photograph from my first assignment, which was a pass-fail moment in my life. I struggled in Newfoundland, but I didn't fail. I passed, and the reason is this single photograph, made on the 17th roll of my first assignment, the 17th roll of my career at Geographic. It'd be very hard to get closer to the beginning than this photograph. It was the lead picture of the Newfoundland story. The art director said, "Sam, I'm going to make this the lead picture." And I said, "Well, I'm happy about that, but why?" And he said, "It's iconic." And I said, "Howard, what do you mean by iconic?" And he said, "Sam, this could be on a billboard or a postage stamp, and it would be equally strong at each or any scale." I well remember how I made this picture. I am not looking at the son of this father-son pair of fishermen, even though he towers over me in the boat. It looks like he's the subject, but I'm looking past him at his father in the dory in the distance. And I'm not looking at the dory. I'm only looking at the father. He needs to rise head and shoulders above the horizon line for the picture to succeed. That's how big he looks to me in the viewfinder. How often did it happen? It happened once. That's what Bresson meant by the decisive moment. "16 years later, I'm on the prairies of Montana for a branding and castration, the annual spring branding. And I show you this picture because this is how life looked to me day in and day out. It is not composed. It's chaotic, jumbled in every way. Brandings are nightmares of chaos. Animals, people, trucks, fencing, all in disarray. I was so disharmonized by this, so without optimism. And this wasn't the first branding I'd been to. I'd been to many, and they were all like this. I was so discontent with this that I left. I went to a diner, and I did what I did when I was alone. I read Time magazine. If I had a new Time magazine on assignment, I was a happy guy. And this particular Time magazine had a review of the just published Virginia Woolf diary. And Christopher Porterfield, whose byline I recognized, and I knew he was a good writer, Christopher Porterfield was writing the review of her diaries. And I read it avidly, and especially the ending, where he quotes her. He says, ultimately, the diaries had the same spiritual stake for Virginia as the rest of her writing. And then he pulls a quote out of her diary. If one does not lie back and sum up and say to the moment, this very moment, stay, you are so fair, what will be one's gain? Dying? No. Stay. This moment. No one ever says that enough. Well, this vest I'm wearing, I was wearing that day. You'll see it in the slideshow. I'm wearing it tonight because we're all on assignment together. And this is what I wore every day. So I took a pen out of my pocket and I circled that. And then from someone in the restaurant, I got scissors. And I folded that and I put it into my pocket. And I said, if I ever have a book I'm going to title it Stay This Moment, because photographers give the lie to that last sentence. No one ever says that enough. I said to myself in that diner, photographers do. Every time they make a heartfelt photograph, they're saying, stay this moment. I went back to the branding. A group had broken away, and I looked beyond them, as I always do, to the background, the setting, the horizon. There was a rumpled vision of Ohio there. That spoke to me. I excluded everything else at the branding and concentrated on this tableau. I took a seat right there on the grass. I knelt down and I concentrated on the cowboy in the tan jacket. I let the scene unfold against the canvas of the sky and the grass. This is the photograph, named many years later, decades later, as one of the 50 greatest photographs ever made at National Geographic. National Geographic didn't publish it, however, in the story that I was working on. And I set the goal, the life goal, of making this photograph known, despite them not publishing it. They later published it just to say they could publish it, that they had published it. A carpenter friend of mine loved this picture so much that he made a jigsaw puzzle of it and gave it to me as a Christmas present. And I thought, that is perfect, because when I face situations like this one, as the photographer, I consider that they are puzzles or problems to be solved. I've broken down this puzzle to show you my thinking. The first thing I saw and concentrated on and based the picture on is the gray sky. It's clean. It connects to the green, clean prairie at 4 points only. But those 4 points are enough to articulate the horizon. All important to me. I concentrated on the cowboy in front of me. Why? Because he had the knife in his mouth. I gave the photograph a foundation because my dad told me to build photographs. And for a well-built photograph, you need a foundation and a bookend. And now I've got a bookend. And into that frame comes another tableau, a doggy being brought down. And then the cowboy who brought that calf, he's wheeled around to see if everything's all right. And lastly, out of the corner of my eye, I have to decide in or out, because that bucket has moved all the way across this composition and it's about to leave. So the only thing I'm looking at the end is the bucket. There is much to look at in this photograph, and that's why it is admired by my peers. The only photograph of mine that I know is actively admired by my peers. Why? Because it's difficult to hold multiple narratives together in one composition. So there's a number of narratives to look at, but I only look at one element. I look at the cowboy in the distance. Why is he important? He rises together with his horse, head and shoulders above the horizon line. That's how big he looks to me. Run the horizon through the head of the horse, and this picture is destroyed. The same if it runs through the body of the cowboy. No, he needs to be exalted. He needs standing and stature in this picture, because from him, the whole composition flows. The horizon matters. It has life-giving or picture-destroying power. 16 years separate these photographs. I will say to you, they are the same photograph, taken with the same sensibility. One is just significantly harder than the other. But in 16 years, that's the move you want to make. You want to take on more difficult problems. You want to solve more complex puzzles. The pictures stand together in my mind. Why? The horizon line. I mark my career not only in single photographs, but in episodes. One is about to unfold that will last 40 years. I came to this street corner every day that I could in Hagi, Japan. The story from the Geographic was about the ancient city of Hagi, and I knew I had to express antiquity. And so I looked at every street corner in this city, and I settled on this one, and I didn't go to other street corners. If I was going to get it, it would happen here. And day after day, nothing happened. No one arrived. Cars came around the corner, or motorcycles, occasionally a bicycle, but mainly nothing. Nevertheless, it was the setting I needed. And then one day, two elderly women, very cordial ladies, walked by me. They nodded in my direction respectfully, and I nodded in their direction. And then with a 28 millimeter lens, I followed them because they are going to go to the corner. They are going to turn the corner, and they're going to keep on walking. And so I followed them at a discreet distance with the 28. And when they got to the street corner, they stopped. And they said goodbye to each other. And when they did, I lifted off my shoulder the 90 millimeter lens I had on, and I nailed the picture that not only got the street corner and the antiquity, but it got the Japanese culture, bowing. I had nailed it, and I was wrong. The bowing obscured their faces and diminished their friendship. I kept on photographing, and this is the picture that has lasted through the years. After they rose up, they thought, the woman on the right thought of something that she wanted to say that was affectionate or cordial or funny to her friend. And in the telling, she reached out and touched the garment of her friend, and they both smiled. I learned photography from my father, who had one thought that he imparted to me. Compose the picture, Sammy, and wait. And that's what I have done. By coming to the street corner day after day, by following them, by stopping, using my 90 millimeter lens, by making a mistake that I thought I had it, by staying with it, I had composed the picture and I was waiting. But I didn't stop there. The lady said goodbye, and I, in a bold, personal act, walked up to the remaining lady. There is a tradition in Japan, which I knew about, which is to see your friend or your guest all the way home. She cannot walk closer to that wall. Right in front of her is a little canal of water. She has walked all the way over there and is looking in the direction of her friend to see her safely home. This is one of the only photographs I've ever had on my wall in front of me in Virginia. I had a 5x7 black and white of this for many years. Why? It's Japan, which is important to me. It's deeply Japan, but it is also deeply me. I'm a structuralist, as I said. I believe in the power of horizon lines and having the head and shoulders of your subject above the horizon line. I believe in the power of photographs of people's backs. You just need a fragment of their face. I also believe in the power of gesture. All of that is here. Japan, and deeply myself. That's documentary photography. The world plus you. You stamp the image. Put yourself into it. "34 years passed. Because of a workshop student named George Nobechi, an aspiring Japanese-Canadian photographer, I was taken back to Hagi, Japan after 34 years. Again, George and I, together with his mother, went to the corner. Again, nothing. No one, no sound, no traffic. We went around to different houses. George had the photograph of the two women touching their garments on his iPhone. And we showed it to people in the neighborhood. Did anyone recognize the women? No, they did not. We went back to the corner and loitered. By and by, a woman passed us, politely skirting us. George's mother shouted out to her, "Sumimasen? Hello, pardon me." We walked up to her. George got out his phone and gave it to me. And George in Japanese said, "Do you recognize these ladies?" And she said, "That's my mother," together with her best friend. It was a supernatural moment for both of us. This woman is the age that her mother was, the white-haired woman, when I photographed the two ladies at the corner. Four more years passed. George and I went back to Mrs. Sono's house, and now she had her daughter there. So now I photographed the grandmother, the mother, and the granddaughter. We were invited in, which is rare in Japan. We had tea and a dessert in the tea room. And then it was time to say goodbye. And when I think of why I love Japan, I think of this picture. Like mother, like daughter. I've shifted to my left, to micro-compose Mrs. Sono's head in that block of light adobe. The tree was venerable, 300 years old. I had missed sunset, which I was greatly disturbed by because it had been a spectacular sunset and would have been heroic on this tree. And I sat in a funk on top of my car and sang the blues to myself about why I hadn't gotten there early. It was my own fault. The light had been spectacular 5 miles ago or 5 minutes ago, and I stopped, even though I was targeting this tree. And while I sat there, I got a gift, which photographers often get if they are patient. There was a second sunset. The sun hit the clouds, a mighty thunder cloud above us, and down came golden light. And I made this picture, and it ran double page in the Geographic. My guide, who had brought me to this tree, was very admiring, very much in admiration of my photograph. And for my sake, he wanted to make a long trek out into the savannah of Western Australia to hold my photograph in front of the tree. This is the photograph he made. The tree had been struck by lightning and was now being devoured by green ants. When I went a few years later, the tree was gone. I want to say a word about that guide. And by extension, all of the guides and the fixers and the interpreters that I had, they are unsung except by me. I honor them when I talk. I honor them in my memory. I honor them in my work. And this was one of the best. Mike Osborne, a wildlife officer and a photographer who guided me in Western Australia. I owe Mike a lot for sending me to that tree and a dozen other beautiful, meaningful places. But Mike owes me. I picked up this woman as an around-the-world hitchhiker in the Great Sandy Desert. She was sunburned, desiccated, and she held a sign that said Roadhouse. And the Roadhouse was 60 miles away. And she was with another girl, her friend from Denmark, and they were hitchhiking around the world. And they were stalled and stranded in the Great Sandy Desert and in need of a ride. So I said, hop in. And that afternoon, Mike, in another car behind us, had to stop and fix the car of two ladies whose car was broken down. He just went to work, and he didn't save their lives, but they thought that he did. And then our car hit a bird, and he fixed the bird. And so before we got to the Roadhouse, he'd fixed the car of two women and mended a bird, and Anne fell in love. And Mike and Anne were married. When I went back, they had two daughters, and they subsequently had a son, and Mike and I were laughing about, I think, the tree or something we're laughing about, maybe sports. Mike had a contract to pitch for the St. Louis Cardinals, but wanted to stay in Australia and work with wildlife. Mike and Ann, when I last saw them, were running an alligator farm in the far northwest of Australia. I'm wearing the vest. This is one of my favorite photographs. It's of Tolstoy bending down in 1923, asking a child if she will organize a folk dance for a little festival. This is really a primitive photography, but what I admire is the photographer nailed the moment. I think that a great documentary photograph has three elements: setting, expression, and gesture. And with great difficulty, this photographer has nailed all three. When I expressed an interest in this print, my interpreter, my guide, said, "I will get you a print of that." And when she produced it, she said, "You know, Sam, that little girl is still alive." I said, "Could I meet her?" I didn't speak Russian. She didn't speak English. But we studied the picture. She told me about it. I asked her if she remembered the moment. And she said, "No, I don't. But I remember Tolstoy's funeral, which was 3 years later, an event of world significance." This is the story of Fungi, the wild dolphin that lives in the Dingle Harbor of Ireland. I'd been mugged and robbed, my camera stolen and beaten up pretty badly for my cameras. I'd gone to Dingle to get away from Dublin, and it rained for a week. And the innkeeper, who you see in the background, said to me, "Sam, you seem despondent. I think you should come on my sailboat with the cook and myself and my dog Jock. Jock and Fungi, the wild dolphin that lives in the harbor, have a relationship." And I said to myself, no dog has a relationship with a dolphin. This is going to end up with me being seasick. And even though I was pessimistic and in a real dismal state of mind, I had learned, geographic travel had taught me to say yes. So I said yes very reluctantly. Nothing happened for 20 minutes. And then straight out of the ocean, no leaping around, but straight on a vertical climb, came Fungi, the wild dolphin. And at the top of his climb, he looked down at Jock and tweeted or squeaked or squealed, and Jock barked. And for the next 20 minutes, I forgot everything that I know about photography, about light, moments, composition, compose and weight, everything. And I did the thing I like least. I chased the rabbit, which is a term I use for chasing the subject and forsaking the setting. I chased Jock and I chased Fungi, and I failed at both, and I knew it. So finally I settled down and I created a composition on the background of which is the name of my assignment, Ireland. And in the foreground is Jock, and there's nothing in the middle ground. If Fungi will come, I am ready. I have composed the picture and I'm waiting. The picture became famous. It ran double page at the Geographic and was on many publications about Ireland. The picture had a great life, as well it should have. First, best. What happened in between? What did I do to move from first to best? I came to my senses. I remembered who I was. Years went by, decades went by, and I got a call. It was from the son of the owner of the inn, the owner of the sailboat. He said, "My dad's 80th birthday is coming, and I would like to get him a print of your famous photograph. Could you send me one?" And I said, "Yes, I would be happy to do that." "How is your dad?" "Well, shortly after you were there, Sam, he left my mom and me. He ran away with the cook, and they live in Ireland, and he runs an inn there in the Pyrenees." And I said, "Well, I don't know what to say about that." And he said, "Say nothing. He's happy, and my mom's happy. She's taken up painting, and one of her favorite paintings is of your photograph." I said, "I would love to see that." He said, I'll send you a photograph of it." And when I got it, I was charmed, of course. I mean, look, it's great, right? That's joy. If you're a photographer, that can only make you happy. And then I noticed that something was missing from the painting. The hand of the cook. People ask me what my favorite assignment was. I had maybe 30. And there were significant ones. In fact, The longer I was at Geographic, the more significant the assignments became. I started with Newfoundland in winter, and I ended with the thought to be undoable assignment, life inside the Japanese Imperial Palace. I had grown. But my favorite assignment was a humble one, an assignment that no one believed in but me. And when I was on it, everyone forgot where I was. So I just stayed on it for 3 or 4 months. It was an assignment called Britain's Hedgerows. And that assignment that no one believed in had the picture of the year in the estimation of the viewers. Viewers get to vote, readers of the Geographic. And what they voted on as their favorite photograph was this one. What does it have to do with me? Where am I in this picture? The hedgerows are on the back layer. The setting is the hedgerows. The subject is the dog, the father and the son. That's a 1-lane road, and we're traveling down it very fast. I'm fearful about what's coming around the corner, or at least apprehensive. And the dog looks back at me as though he understands my state of mind. My other most favorite assignment was the assignment with the best headline, not written by me, written by Kathy Newman, the writer, staff writer. The Shakers' Brief Eternity. It was about the Shakers, and the Shakers are scattered all over the Midwest and especially New England. But they had a stronghold here in Kentucky. I knew that. Gretchen took me to Shakertown on my last day at UK. I loved it. I respected it. I made the story, the National Geographic story about Shakers. I made it about Shakertown. It was my homage to Kentucky. Thomas Merton famously wrote, "The particular beauty of a Shaker chair comes from the belief that the maker has that an angel might come and sit on the chair." And I knew that quote. I knew it from college. And I was determined to make a photograph that lived up to Merton and his thought. We the people. I got to see this document, the actual real thing, to hold it in my hands when it was being laser copied by the technicians at the Library of Congress. It was a one-time opportunity to take the document out and to re-photograph it using a laser. It was humbling. It was inspiring. It was my mom and dad wrapped up into one moment. My mom and dad who so believed in education and that travel was the key to learning. At a certain point, 1993, I think, I received a book in the mail, University of Kentucky, then and now, photographed by my great friend, Bill Luster. This is the inscription that Bill wrote in it. In addition to that, he dedicated the book to me. What can you say in the face of that, except, thank you, Bill, I love you. You may say and think that I have had a charmed life, and you would not be wrong. But all photographers at the Geographic suffered for that life. On my second assignment, all of my equipment was stolen and my film, including shot film in Yellowstone Park. In 1975, while photographing from a hang glider, I crashed and badly broke my back. I thought my career was over. In Ireland, as I have said, I was mugged and robbed for my cameras. Twice in Australia, I was on unsurvivable plane rides that I had chartered. I had chartered it to photograph the storm, and we mistakenly, inadvertently, were overtaken by the storm. I thought that this was my last photograph, but it was a horizon line like no other. Not a dark one, a brilliantly bright one. But as for the storm and the flight, I could not make the case that we would survive. We couldn't get back to land. We found an uncharted, abandoned oil exploration airstrip in the Timor Sea. Other photographers, colleagues of mine, suffered more. My suffering wasn't exactly thefts, beatings, and profound fright. My dad also declined cognitively. And when I went home, not believing that he was in decline, he and I watched TV, as we always did. He sat in that rocket chair. We watched the Johnny Carson Tonight Show, and then he went to bed. And about a half hour later, he reappeared carrying his sheets and pillowcases. He was headed for the basement to do the laundry at midnight. And that's when I knew he would never be the same. I was right about that. And that same year, my wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I thought for both of them that a death sentence had been given. I was right about my dad and wrong about my wife. The woman who walked from Mexico to Canada was now happy to walk down the driveway and back. She is alive tonight. Today, I know she walked down that driveway and back. This was 1998. When the millennium turned, as a gesture of confidence and belief in the future, we hung the moon and the stars in the sky. This was our New Year's greeting card, January 1, 2000. Was there a high point to my career? Yes. It occurred in 1990. I got a show in New York City. That train that I photographed in Shaker Heights, Ohio, headed for New York, that my dad and I both wanted to be on, we ended up in New York for a night. The International Center of Photography gave me a one-man show. My dad was the guest of honor. Everyone in the room knew how far we had come from our little basement darkroom in Sylvania, Ohio. I hadn't forgotten the clipping. It was still in my wallet. That week, I went to the New York Public Library and requested Virginia Woolf's diary. I wanted to see it in her actual handwriting. No, stay this moment. No one ever says that enough. I look back at the Geographic from the vantage point of 2025, and what stands out? Two people. Denise Myers, and Robert Gilka, the man who hired me twice. The fact that he hired me twice and that I worked for him is a lifetime honor, one that I am still trying to live up to. Paul, I can stop here. Are you serious? The last. My last act at National Geographic was my best act. Pam Spaulding, I knew, had a 30-year project of photographing one Louisville family. And I wanted to see that book published. This is that book. But the book is a little, well, I'll just say, it's a halftime book. Pam has continued to photograph the McGarveys. She is in her 6th decade. I think it's the single greatest photographic project of modern photography. The back of the book has my appreciation. This is obviously Bill and Pam. By Ken Whitaker. Taken in my hometown, Charlottesville. So Pam and Bill brought the love for each other and for Ken and for me and for photography to Charlottesville. This is my editor, Leah Ben David Val. I had the same editor for 30 years. She transcended the geographic. Together we did 3 books. We're working on the 4th. Seeing Gardens is a collection of the garden photographs. The heart and soul of that book are photographs where there is no garden. And that is my contribution to garden photography worldwide, is that I've made my body of work non-garden gardens to open up our eyes, all of our eyes, to the gardens that are around us, the gardens of life. You remember this? The grievous error that I couldn't do anything about? Well, I talked about that, apparently, in a lecture at UK in 2004 or 5. And someone in the audience said, maybe Sam Abell can't do anything about it, but I will. I will become editor of the yearbook. I, Hilly Schiffer, will do what Sam Abell couldn't do. And so she created the 06 UK yearbook and wrote me this letter in it. Can't read that. Here it is. Hilly is in the audience. On top of dedicating the book to Dick, she, together with Jonathan Palmer, also here tonight, wrote up a 6-page tribute to the '67 yearbook. And Jonathan drove all the way from New Orleans to Charlottesville to take the picture on the right. And somewhere they found a picture of me in '67. And the amazing thing is, I'm wearing the same vest that I'm wearing tonight. This was a vest that was ahead of its time. I will tell you, because there's a pocket right here that has my camera in it. The vest is no longer made. This vest I found on eBay, and it's my last one. I have to make it last. I taught. I started teaching workshops in '77, and I announced my retirement from workshops in May of '25. What did I teach? The lessons and the soul and the heart of Dorothea Lange. I always carried her book with me. This is me in Santa Fe talking about her and showing her book. What's great about her book is how small it is. Pam is on the right track with the size of her book. I taught what my dad taught me at Sylvania High School. I taught about this picture that I made when I was 14. Why? Because all of my dad's lessons are in it. Sammy, build your picture with strong structure. Diagonals, squares, horizon lines, circles. Look for structure. Well, there's a diagonal, and there's another one. And there's a foundation. If you're building, you got to have a foundation. And then there was the mysterious thing that he told me about composing and waiting. I didn't understand what that meant. But there were only two things moving. One was the train, and one was my dad buttoning his coat. So when I saw those, I made the exposure. And the result is this picture, a built photograph. There's one thing he didn't tell me, however, that became very important to me, and that is the space between the back of his coat and the train station, that slender space. I didn't see it then, nor did he, nor did we talk about it. I recognized it later. I've lived with the picture for 60 years. And that little slender space is all that I look at. It gives life to my dad, to the shape of his coat, and to his essence, his identity in the picture. So I teach that photographs are built. This is unpublishable. I need the sun to come out between some of those clouds. I'm not optimistic. But it happened. The picture seems to be about the slaughtered cow that's going to the barbecue in the desert of Western Australia, or about the people. The picture has become very well known in Australia. It ran double page in the Geographic, and there was an immense enlargement of it at the Australian embassy. But the picture is built, and the reason people like it has to do with that. It's built by shapes. Do people see that They do not. They feel it. First, best. I teach compose and wait. Stop by the space. I waited for the woman. I didn't know who was coming around the corner. I had no idea. Could have been a child or a man. Could have been a group. I cannot tell you that I saw the shadow, her shadow, but that it doesn't touch the shadow of the bank is everything. If her shadow touches, we're not looking at this picture. She needs to levitate, and her shadow allows her to do that. But she didn't stop me. The space and the light did. I'm a structuralist. And there's that gray sky and horizon line of Ohio. "30 years later, I was in Los Angeles and I was stopped by the space. I waited. The 3 Asian women need to come right in the picture. It's about them. They can't be wrong. They have to be right. But their shadow matters too. Did I see that? No. Did I feel it? Yes. It's the same photograph. One is just much more complicated. It's dawn in Russia. I'm having a day off, Sunday. I wake up, I walk over to the window, and I see the pears that my wife has put in the window to ripen. I like the picture, I make a Polaroid, I study the Polaroid, and I decide to devote my day to making a picture of the pears. The subject of my assignment is the life of Tolstoy. And I was assigned it because people felt I had the poetic soul enough to draw from modern life the spirit of Tolstoy. They were more confident about that than I was. I took the curtain away. Buses and people arrived. I made my first mistake, turning the horizontal scene into a vertical, but I waited for the man. Then I made the most grievous mistake. I turned the Kremlin and St. Peter's Cathedral, St. Basil's Cathedral, into buses, trucks, and pavement. But what I'm trying to do here, I can tell now, is put a horizon into this. I'm trying to get Ohio into this picture. And it's obviously a failure, but that's how strong my desire is. And then I make that horizon out of the window frame. But I'm using a wide-angle lens. I'm ruining the picture in a new way. I've made my third significant mistake. And then I come to the photograph. I get there. Wide-angle lens, lower point of view, use the horizon to block out the parking lot. Concentrate on the clouds. They're the only thing moving. When I made this picture, even though I couldn't see it, of course, this is film, I thought, I've done it. And I put the curtain back. And I stood back, and I thought, I'm not done. This photograph, the result of 12 hours of on-again, off-again work, taken on a day off, was later named one of the 50 greatest photographs ever made at National Geographic. Why does it work? Because I waited for the hem of the curtain to rise into the composition. Why did I want that? I wanted life at the bottom of the photograph. So from top to bottom, left to right, and front to back, there would be life in the photograph. It is a still life that is not still. It is alive. That is my day. And this is a good place to stop, because the New York Times, 30 years after I made the photograph, called it famous. I am not going to dispute that. Thank you all.